Hello and welcome. You're watching QTV and you are watching The Week in Review, our weekly trawl through 10 big stories from the week. And as ever, I have my co-host, Mr. Mboj, to go through the stories with me. Mr. Mboj, welcome as ever.
Thank you very much, Adi.
And for anybody who's watching for the first time or even for the 100th time, this is how it goes. We look at 10 big stories from the week just gone by and we go in some detail and discuss them. And so quite a packed program, 10 stories, only an hour. So let's get cracking, shall we? First story, actually this one, quite an interesting one. Lots of countries, including the Gambia, claim they are independent. And yet when you look at their statute books, there are laws dating back to colonial times, some from the 1890s and some from the 1900s. Some people are saying it's time we got rid of them. Have a look.
The Gambia, as a former colony and in common with many African countries, inherited from the British and still has on its statute books laws that are nearly a century old or older, some of which are seen to be petty and discriminatory against the poor and marginalized groups. For example, in Gambia's criminal code, people can be arrested, fined or jailed for 2 years or both for offences such as being a rogue, vagabond, idle and disorderly persons, defamation of foreign princes, pretending to exercise witchcraft or tell fortunes, failure to pay debts, or using abusive or insulting language to a public health officer, etc. Ironically, the British, who bequeathed us these laws, have expunged all of them from their statute books. The Executive Director of Institute of Human Rights and Development in Africa, Gay Sow, advocates for the repealing or amendment of such petty offences in our law books.
They're colonial relics, and unfortunately, some of them are really couched in very disrespectful terms. And even if you look at our Lunatics Detention Act, you would see terms such as idiots, imbeciles, or whatever you might want to call it.
Yes, you heard some of the terms there. Other terms are vagabonds, vagrants, villains. Actually, I made up the last bit. Villains aren't in there, but they might as well be. So outdated is the language, Mr. Mboj. A real throwback to colonial times. But it seems that even after independence, even after becoming a republic, we couldn't be bothered to go through and expunge these from our statute books.
Absolutely. Well, how many times have we said that, you know, the continuation, really, the radical steps that should have been taken earlier, we never did. But it's quite interesting as well. It seems, I was just wondering when I was going through the story, do we actually apply them?
Well, you know,
I wonder.
At that conference, what they were saying was that theoretically they could be applied.
Absolutely.
So if somebody is deemed to be a vagrant or a rogue, he or she could be arrested and could be, as you know, Troy said there, you know, I mean, the one that had everybody smiling was that if you use insulting language towards foreign princes.
Absolutely, and public health officials,
officials,
like
particularly that. At a time of, you know, COVID, you know, these are things, because of course in times past, you know, public health officials, they went around and they fumigated people's places forcefully. And sometimes they were met with resistance. So all these people who were these kind of anti-vaxxers, nothing new, you know, just a different set of circumstances. But, you know, the kind of seriousness of it, and you've asked the relevant question, you know, would these ever be applied? I guess many of them have not. And just that the danger is, as long as they're there, they could be applied.
Absolutely. And the one that struck me particularly was the one on pretending to exercise witchcraft or tell people's fortunes. I said, God, I would have loved to have been in one of those trials.
Can you imagine?
as it were.
Because there are people still doing that today, you know, saying that they can tell people's fortunes and so on. And I'm sure nobody's been arrested for that.
But it just tells you, these were what? Tools of control.
Indeed, very much so.
Control.
Yes.
So the people who took over really had no idea that they were really taking over a colonial state, but and because the model itself had really formed itself in our minds,
Quite.
we found them useful, or we didn't make them a priority. That wasn't a priority.
Well, I think you
know,
hit the
for
nail
a
on
lot
the
of
head
people,
there.
you know,
Yeah.
that wasn't a priority.
Sure.
You know, so they focused on the narrow
Yes.
in many ways.
I mean, there were many big things, but some things lingered, like hanging, still there. So theoretically, somebody could be, sentenced to death by hanging, because that is still on the books, and that is a holdover also from colonial. And it's interesting because just yesterday, on the front page of a Sierra Leone newspaper, somebody posted, "Isn't it time we got rid of the 1902 Lunacy Act?" And so, you heard people being described as, imbeciles and idiots and lunatics. I mean,
Absolutely.
nobody uses that terminology anymore.
That's
you
it.
know.
The same as what the rogue, vagabond.
Vagabond.
You know, these are like sort of PC times.
Yes, it is.
Sensibilities have moved on.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
absolutely. So yes, it's just we genuinely know that we've said it here so many times that
Sure.
we need to dismantle that architecture
Yes.
that we have
well,
inherited. And these are all, they all matter in the end. They add up.
That's right.
You know, all the different
mean,
bits that we need to
Yeah,
do.
I would urge people to go and read some of these,
Yes.
because some of the ones that are still on the statute books, who knows, they might remain, including for running a brothel, for benefiting from the proceeds of prostitution. So all of these, and they date back to early 1900s, and some from the late 1890s, I beg your pardon.
Absolutely. So they're taking their own kind of social history,
Sure,
as
and
it
kind of
were,
lumped it.
and the rules, their laws,
Mm-hmm,
sort of where they have evolved to, whatever that might mean,
Yeah.
and universalized.
Yes, indeed.
They have
yeah.
essentially
Yeah.
universalized their world,
Yes.
and felt that was the right thing to just come and superimpose
Well, this is
on
it.
something. There was something
And as you said there, and what's interesting, and it came through in the report from Choi there, is that almost all of these, in fact, I think all of them have been expunged from British statute books. I was involved in a project in the 1990s where some of the really old ones, and I'm kind of lucky, I guess, to have lived through quite radical changes to bankruptcy law in England, where, as you know, if you read Dickens, a bankrupt was sent to prison and you would die in prison. And then as the 20th century approached, somebody thought, hang on a minute, if this person is in prison, how are they going to work off their debts to pay the people, to pay their creditors?
Absolutely.
And so they stopped imprisoning people. You could work and you could pay off. But certain professions up to recently, and I say recently, I'm talking about in the 2000s, a doctor or a lawyer could be struck off for going bankrupt in England until quite recently.
Absolutely.
And so even they had laws that went back to previous centuries and so on. But I think now it's good that they're doing this kind of thorough examination of it, and some of these, they're just incompatible with modern language and modes of addressing people, and just with modern times, really.
Yes. What's happening in Britain, it only tells us that sort of modernity, sort of modernizing is an ongoing process.
Well, that's right.
It
Yes.
really never ends. And for us as well, we have to go to the other side of the coin, I think. The two are interlinked. The idea that all these sort of noxious laws, odious stuff, let's remove them. That's one element. But the ones that we've put in there,
Yes.
for our own socio-political organization and decision making,
That's
as it
right.
were.
Yes.
Let us enforce them. Let us apply them.
True.
As it
Which
were.
is-
You have
which
that
is something
order,
we're not very good at.
Which is something we are not very good at.
Yeah.
So it seems to me, I mean, today what we fashionably call the holistic approach. If I do not get all the aspects of the solution right,
Sure.
that single element is not going to make any difference.
Yeah,
See, this
exactly.
is really what the key is. So there must be as they call it, the multi-dimensional, the multi-pronged.
Yes, and not the kind of piecemeal. Should not be a piecemeal approach.
It wouldn't work. Just imagine, it will be like a waste. A drop in the ocean, and without it, and sooner or later, that will die. Then you come and bring something else, this fractured way of doing things, it will die individually. But collectively, they become strong.
That's right.
That's what an institution, I suppose, sort of is, building an institution.
Sure. Thank you. So as you say, Mr. Mboj, holistic, not a piecemeal approach. And yes, let's hope we have a thorough root and branch clearing up of these old laws. Thank you for that. And now on to our second story. This is one we're kind of getting used to hearing about, rather, which is, the drug law enforcement people destroying a whole bunch of drugs. Have a look.
Honorable Yankuba Sonko, the Minister of Interior, urged people to take a firm stand against misinformation and share facts to help in the fight against illicit drug use.
We are aware that many factors making young people vulnerable to drugs. Key among them is misinformation. We have observed that young people, particularly girls, are increasingly engaged in abuse of controlled drugs. Most of them are influenced by lifestyles they saw on internet and other media. The best way to reverse this trend is to counter the impression given and guide them through career guidance and counseling schemes.
There you had Yankuba Sonko. Mr. Mboj, as I said, leading up to that, we see these dramatic burnings of drugs. Do they have an effect? And if so, what?
Yeah, this is exactly the point. Certainly, we've seen a good number of these occasions where they burn drugs and the like. And they've been doing it for how long? But just listening to Mr. Dabo there, and I'm wondering, does he think that these people who use drugs and all of that, they've just been misguided? Perhaps some element of it is in there. But really, the moralistic language.
Which is the point I was going to come to, because one of the things, and in fact I said to the reporter when he came back, I said, actually, I wish you had picked up on that point, which was that they said that a lot more young girls seem to be abusing, sort of serious drugs. And they said that this was based on the kind of lifestyle that they'd seen on the internet or in movies and so on. And I wondered where they got those statistics from, because I don't get the sense that they've done the kind of survey that would warrant that comment. But it was quite a bold statement, I felt. In fact, it's the thing that stood out for me more than anything else from that report.
I mean, if you go around the world, everywhere, law enforcement officers, they're talking about young people and drugs. It's the zeitgeist, it's the age.
And to be honest, it's been that way for a while.
It's been that way for a long time. Some will tell you perhaps, in the 60s, that was the breakthrough, as it were, generation. And afterwards it caught on in every urban, go anywhere, go to China, go anywhere. In every urban city and all of that, there's the issue. So maybe just say no doesn't work.
No. I mean,
this is really, that's the language, the rhetoric is preaching.
Well, that's
just
right.
say no.
That's right.
If they know the dangers. I mean, we all know how human beings are like. We all know, we do lots of bad things. We know the dangers. People just do. That is why law and enforcement is important for people. We all know that.
I mean, it's an interesting point you raised there, because, what I've always wondered is that in some countries, they go into schools, and they have people who are, some of them are they're reformed drug addicts, and they talk to school children, mainly to scare them, say, look what happened to me, don't let it happen to you. But it doesn't seem to kind of it has some effect, because it will always get through to some people. But are you aware that such a program exists here?
No. But possibly you might have mentors, because we tend to have these schemes. A lot of you read in the newspapers, you do get stories of mentorships here and there. So one can imagine certain mentors going out to school children, talking to them that way and that sort of thing.
Sure.
But again, you also need a kind of reinforcement at home, the wider cultural bit. And yes, now we have to add the internet technology is so much part of, absolutely, so much part of what we do now. So it only means that perhaps it's a lot more difficult.
Sure.
As it were, for parents. Oh, I feel sorry for modern parents.
Yeah, so, yeah.
It was in many ways.
In many ways.
So it's much more difficult now for parents to really control their children.
Yeah.
And when you look at Africa today, the youthful population.
Well, indeed.
And it's youth that tend to be more experimental.
Totally true.
That. So perhaps isn't it time to go back to the drawing board and say that perhaps our drugs policy is not working.
Sure.
We've seen it around the world. So many people have done that. But you need to be bold. That is why they say that leaders need courage.
Indeed.
You need to be bold to really think what they call the unthinkable, as it were,
Well,
so that you
right.
can get it right.
That's right.
Otherwise, we'll just be getting these things every so often. We've done this, we've done that. You haven't tackled the root of the problem. We'll keep on getting it all the time.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
So there you are. Hope they're listening, hope they're watching, and hope they're learning, because really we need to do something about it before it gets to be a serious problem in this country, as it has been in many other countries. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboch. And now on to something which, if you live in the West, you think, gosh, paperless record management system, why are they only talking about it now? Well, it's quite a big thing, actually, and have a look at this and you'll understand why.
Vincent Mendy, the Regional Program Coordinator for Africa, lists the benefits of the electronic record system in the day-to-day running of the hospital.
The point-of-care system design will reduce patient waiting time, allow staffs to access medical history instantly, and provide exciting research opportunities. The $45,000 electronic system will enable government to store data for research.
A story that I really welcomed and I was quite pleased to see. It's a first step, a small step, Mr. Mboch, electronic management system for records. At the moment you go to hospital and they start looking for a paper file with your records, and it could take ages. This can be instantaneous if it's done right. A great thing, surely.
Absolutely. IT is part of management.
Yeah, indeed.
These days we just can't, get away from that. Yeah. So absolutely. And we want all institutions, really. Just imagine the
and that's
ease.
the point I was going to come to. We
absolutely.
Want all
that's the key. That's the key. We're glad that they've been proactive. They've done it now.
Yeah.
It should be an immediate priority.
Sure.
In many ways, it must be immediate priority. That's it, because the efficiency it will bring to how you manage whatever sector that you manage, and the customer service. And that's what you can create.
Well, that's right, and it can be, you can access information instantaneously. And I mean, I'm not saying that the Gambia with its resources should get up to the stage of the UK, for example, but at the UK, if this is a letter that comes to any government department or agency, it is scanned onto the system and recorded electronically straight away. Anybody wanting to access that 5 minutes later can access it just by typing in a reference or a word in there that relates to that, and that becomes the kind of permanent electronic record which can then be shared anywhere, both internally and externally. And this is really what we should be aiming to. But as I said, early days yet, but a welcome sign. Sure.
It's all about organizational structure.
Sure.
In many ways, you see that's what it is. So you build in what works for us.
Yeah, sure.
What can I afford? What is it I can afford? And what works in the context of what I can afford? That's management. So it's most of these things are really doable. Remember the other day we said, here our problem is not about ideas. Really, it's just about the commitment, the political commitment, having the will, the stamina, as it were, to last the distance and want to see it done. These are the qualities that.
And sometimes, I mean, this is kind of partnering with an external organization. And last week we had a story where the National Center for Arts and Culture partnered with Hamburg University to digitize, our heritage records, and they could have those kind of partnerships. So we're not saying government has to cough up the money, but they have to make smart partnerships for organizations. I don't know, Google, are you watching? That could actually fund something like this and even brand it, saying, funded by X, Y, and Z, to really make this, and it makes life so much simpler for everybody.
I mean, we've said it here before. There are areas where government can be facilitative. I think we were talking about this in the context of Gina Bass having to go to Senegal.
That's right.
Because we do not have our own training facilities of that high quality. Sure. We said, yes, sometimes government doesn't simply have to have the money, build the facility and all of that. But you can be facilitative in the sense of having partnerships, or at least helping companies here, as it were. It makes a lot of difference when you have the backing of the government,
as
it were. Then they can be having these partnerships with outside bodies who have the capacity, the resources, the equipment, and that sort of thing. So government can be active in these areas, and we take advantage of them, and not simply use them, and learn from them, and try to implement here what we learn.
Excellent. And I think anybody watching that, one of the reasons we showed it both on the news and here is that you might want to get in touch with this Sheikh Zayed Regional Eye Care Center and say, how did you do it? How did you link up with these people? Can we do the same? Thank you for that, Mr. Mburge. And now on to another matter. I hear all the time said in the Gambia, this is a tax-based economy. It always makes me smile because everywhere I go, people are just handling cash that doesn't go through any system. However, the Revenue Authority have been given a target, and it looks like they might hit that target. What is the target? Have a look.
As a leading national institution that prides itself in its commendable delivery record, the Gambia Revenue Authority is set to meet its annual revenue target for the year 2021. As is customary, at the end of each year, government, in consultation with partners like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, sets revenue collection targets for the following year. This is done to spur performance and meet customer needs. Yankuba Dabo, Commissioner General of GRA, says he is hopeful the authority will meet government's 2021 target that has been set at $12 billion.
Once the target is agreed between GRA and the government, it becomes now our primary role to make sure that that target is collected for the government, because government have a program, and the programs are based on the availability of the revenue.
I smile now, and I smiled when I was asked about this on this morning program. And I said I had a teacher who, if you scored 97 or 98 in a test, he would say, I've obviously made the test too easy for you. And so if government are watching, they'll be saying to the GRA, oh, you're going to hit your target. Maybe we set the target too low. But nonetheless, they've hit the target, and it's quite, as they see it, it was quite an ambitious one, but it made them step up their game. And I guess, really, this is something that they need to do more and more of.
Oh, absolutely, and in recent times, really, we've seen time and time again they increase the amount that they collect year after year after year, which is very interesting, which is very good. Fine, credit to them. Yet when you put it sort of in the wider context, as it were, I was reading it was a World Bank Group report. They said we are still far below our potential.
Well, that's right.
That's it.
And when this came up for discussion after I had left the This Morning show, somebody said to me, can you break it down? And I said, okay, let me give you an example. Driving to work, I will pass maybe 15 or 20 mechanics garages, and they're full of customers every day. They're turning over high, rates of car is being repaired, and people are paying them. I said none of those is a registered business, and yet they've been there, and they've sat there, and some of them are making good money. Now, if we want government to provide certain things, we can't both complain and then not pay our taxes. It's the taxes that we pay that fund some of the things that we say we want. And if we're just, cash in hand, no receipts, nothing recorded, then government's not collecting any revenue, and for you to say, oh well, I'm not earning enough to pay tax, it doesn't work like that. Whatever tax you pay, it will be based on what the earnings are, and there are different rates for different sizes of businesses and so on. And I said that is what needs to happen for this target to look ridiculous if they start insisting that businesses like that are registered. And there are many. That's just one example. There are thousands that people just set up a tin shack and they start, they're not registered as a business, they're not, registered for tax and so on. And so none of that is being collected as tax revenue.
This is precisely the problem. So much of our business is just informal.
It's informal. Yeah.
I think it's informal.
And far too much of it, really.
Far too much of it.
Yeah.
So you really do have, in the broader scheme of things, you just have a handful, as it were, paying the taxes for everybody. And we all sit around and complain, as it were, government this, government that, but we never take our responsibilities. But again, it is for sort of government to help, in the sense of creating the structures, as it were. I think they call these things sort of commitment devices. Right. Yes, so that you make it such that it will be easier to do the right thing and more difficult to do the wrong thing, that sort of thing. So this is it. How can they handle this challenge? I tend to give people sort of like example. I said, in Britain, I understand that when the economy was like this, you had all these trades, as it were, giving services, but things were sort of disjointed and stuff. I think they created a guild system.
The guilds, yes, indeed.
So you had to be part of it. So in many ways, with all of these services, plumbing, masonry, and all of it, perhaps being asked to be, you must be part of an association.
You belong to the guild, you get registered, you get given a number.
You get registered, get given a number. So your delivery, there's something monitoring it.
That's right.
And people have somewhere to go and complain. And then government will collect more tax. It becomes illegal to just go and start offering plumbing services or electrician or anything without this license, that sort of thing. So this is how government helps to create the structures, dealing with the particular situation, then see how you can, sort it out, get the outcome that you want, help your people.
Exactly.
So one has to be creative about these things.
I think, as you said, we have to be creative and let's help each other, help the wider society. Thank you for that, Mr. Ambrose. And now on to our fifth story. Migration is a big topic here in the Gambia, and I would go so far as to say, normally I would say bigger than in most countries, but there are countries in our sub-region which also have serious issues to do with migration. But some people are trying to do something about governance of migration matters. What am I talking about? I hope this will tell you. Have a look.
Talib Ahmed Bensouda, the Lord Mayor of KMC, underscored the importance of collaborating with IOM.
In July of this year, my office received a letter from IOM inviting us to roll out the Migration Governance Indicators Initiative. Knowing how passionate I am to find solutions to issues affecting our youth, I requested the Office of the CEO to register interest in taking part in this process to be conducted by IOM and the Economist Intelligence Unit. It is clear that the biggest asset of our municipality is our young people. The passion to deliver change in our city has to be supported. One of the many ways to achieve this is to provide the enabling environment, both on a national and local level, to allow young people to stay home and contribute to our economic growth.
There you heard Mayor Bensouda saying youth are the greatest asset to the municipality, but not just municipality, but to the country. And yet we see this sort of migration, and what is being talked about here, which maybe people need to see the wider report, is a kind of a pilot program that's being trialed in KMC to kind of manage migration. Is this something we can manage?
Yes, the enabling environment, we keep hearing it now. I'm not sure whether I know what it means anyway.
Anymore, quite.
funnily enough. Yes, I think schemes like this will help some.
Sure.
Obviously, there's no denying that. But structurally, what's been the effect? What can it possibly achieve? Maybe it is important for us to just get the scale right. What is it that one can expect to achieve, really, from such schemes with the IOM?
Yeah. And again, you know, I keep saying this, and it is true. When this came up, the discussion in the office was that people were kind of furrowing their brows thinking, how's this going to work? Because, and somebody said quite rightly, if you put 100 people who are wishing to migrate, you might even get 100 different reasons. And so how then do you measure something like that when they're not all migrating for the same reason? Some are migrating because they have a job, but they want a better job, or they want to make more money. Some don't have a job, and they want, and they think, if I go to the West, I'll get a better job or a good job. Some have been put under pressure by family members. Hey, look, your friend you were at school with, he's gone 5 years ago. Look at that nice house he's built for his parents. So there are so many things. So we're talking about managing migration and kind of governance mechanism. Are we trying to do the impossible with something like this? I don't want to discourage it because it's not even started yet, and it's too early to evaluate. But is this quite a difficult task that they're taking on?
Absolutely. You just mentioned the social pressures. There's a sort of network of beliefs. There are certain norms here that are really encouraging it in many ways. This is really what people want to do.
Since I came,
that sort of thing. So you're more or less swimming against the tide. Which isn't to say that what they're doing is futile, but perhaps understanding sort of the deeper embedding sort of this sort of phenomenon. Then if that is the case, then how do I approach it?
Yeah, I mean, when I watched this, I thought, first thing that struck me, I thought, well, maybe in a year's time we should look back and see, you know, what has it achieved? Has it achieved what it set out to do? Because I think it's quite, you know, people might not realize, but it's quite a difficult task that they've set themselves, you know, what they're trying to do, a governance mechanism to manage migration. It's quite a task.
Absolutely. It's almost like an economy. It is an economy in itself. People wanting to leave.
People wanting to leave, people facilitating them leaving. There's almost like a whole industry, a whole sector of the kind of so-called backway sector. It's like a parallel economy.
Look at South America. I mean, why was it that Trump wanted to build a wall? So this is simply in West Africa or Africa for that matter. We see it around the world, really. People want to go to the West, be it in Europe or America and that sort of thing. So it's an economy of our age.
Yeah, quite.
That's it. And we all know because of the failures of our own national economies, what we should have done because of the failures. So we've generated, as it were, all these affected people, and we've got this actually Ali Mazrui called sort of the crisis of habitation way back in 1979.
That's right. and more recently, Professor Pielo Lumumba, I just heard, I was in the car a couple of days ago, and he was saying, it was a speech I'd heard before, and he said, what is it about Africa that we have made it so dreadful for our young people that they would rather risk their life of drowning at sea or dying in the Sahara Desert than staying in their own countries to make a life and a living? And, you know, he said we need to address that, and that is what they're fighting against.
Precisely. So to me, that fight is more the artists, the storytellers, really, in the humanities, in the world of ideas. I suspect that's really where we must fight this sort of thing. The political elements, for me, politics is not sort of the deepest sort of cocoon, deepest nest, you know, you have a nest within a nest within a nest. I don't think it is. Society is sort of formed in a given way. That is why they do the sort of politics they do. That is why you see different politics around the world. It's a reflection of what we are in that sense. So I think that bigger job, it's more for the creative art.
Sure,
It's not a science thing, it's a novel thing.
Yes, indeed.
The novelist will do more than the scientist or the psychologist or whoever.
Heartily agree with you on that one, as you would no doubt imagine. That brings us nicely to the end of the first part. So join us after this break. Don't go away.
Looking for the fastest and easiest way to receive money transfers from abroad? Well, QMoney and RIA just made it happen. Now you can receive international money transfer from RIA directly into your QMoney account with no additional cost. Once you receive an SMS alert about your transfer, walk into any QMoney agent across the country to receive your payment for free, or use the money immediately to buy credit, QPower, and other QMoney services. It's fast, safe, and convenient. For more info, call customer care on 133. QMoney, Sinu Calpe. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello and welcome. You're watching QTV and you are watching the Week in Review. And if you're just joining after that break, you've missed 5 stories, but this is a cliche, but it's true. There's still 5 cracking stories to go, so don't go away. Mr. Burge, thank you. And now this one, something for the Gambia to be quite proud of. Somebody from the Gambia being appointed to the multi-stakeholder advisory group of the Global Internet Forum. However, he had some interesting comments to say about the Gambia. Have a look.
His appointment to the multi-stakeholder advisory group with the Internet Governance Forum was recently announced by the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Honorable Mbow, who is also the Vice Chair of the National Assembly Select Committee on Education and ICT, says as members of the advisory board, they will help guide the process of formulating good internet laws for all.
And I think Gambia is really struggling to catch up. And I think this is the time now we need to put all these things into place to ensure that we have proper laws in terms of digital rights, we have proper laws in terms of data protection, and at the same time to protect that data that we actually have online away from criminals like these cyber warriors and stuff like that.
I'm really pleased that Alhaji Mbow spoke in the way that he did. He didn't kind of sugarcoat anything. Yes, of course, he was proud of the appointment, but he was also not shy of coming up with the shortcomings of the Gambia and some honest appraisal from him there, surely.
Oh, absolutely. Congratulations to him, of course. And who would be surprised? We all know, what the deal is. When you look around. Sure. So absolutely. So now the next step should be, yes, he calls it digital rights are almost non-existent and the like. I mean, most people, most countries around the world also have been struggling with this. It's a new technology. It has taken them. It's evolving, absolutely. Yeah. And it's taking them time as well. They haven't quite done it because you do get these lobby groups constantly, at their leaders' throats, telling them you need to have proper laws, privacy. So now the game has changed. The world, the pieces on the board have moved around a bit. So we are all sort of finding our way. And
as he said there, I mean, we're still trying to deal with something that's fast moving with a Communications Act of 2009, which is completely out of date and outmoded for what is happening and what is going on. Everything from, we talk about sharing videos and, hate speech and so on. It's all talk. But as he says, the governance, the protection of data, that needs to be embedded in our laws. And, some of these things are not, Communications Act of 2009 is not going to address some of these and, some of what has happened. And in some countries, the law has changed 3 or 4 or 5 times since 2009. And yet we're still stuck with that one. How serious are we?
Absolutely. But again, with us as well, we've had other distractions in many ways. So much sort of should have been done some time back, but people had no time for that.
But this is quite serious because of the amount of time that people spend on the internet and the amount of trade that people do and business that people do on the internet. we can't afford to be left behind. We need to catch up with the rest of the world, and we need to be serious about it. So for me, it's a good thing that he's on the forum, because they're advising. They're not just advising Africa, they're advising the world. And as he says, I notice a tinge of embarrassment there that my own country is so far behind, and yet I'm on this global forum.
Absolutely, and we really don't be embarrassed here among a huge crowd, as it were. For me, what is important really is this. What is it that we can do now?
Sure.
To focus on the practical stuff that one can do now, not to go for any fancy schemes, as it were, these big projects.
Yes, what's achievable.
So you do have a lot of economists who sort of, put it that way, that we must sort of focus low-tech, what is it I can achieve now, and gradually it will build up. There's no denying that we need this. We need to be part of, we need to be mainstreamed into what is going on around the world. In that way, we attract investment, and these are the things that we talk about. But again, let us be realistic and go for what is sustainable, what we genuinely need. Perhaps that will even increase our attractiveness, as it were, because the little that we have, it works.
That's right.
That's really what the key is. It works.
And this is a crucial point, because along with data protection laws, you must have data sharing laws as well. And this is something that tripped up the UK, because they were going headlong into saying, we're going to be this digital age. And so I even worked on something called Modernizing Our Laws for the Information Age. And they got to a point where suddenly somebody read the small print and said, hang on a minute, does it really say that if Mr. Mboj gives his details, his personal details, to the Ministry of Finance so they can do his tax, another ministry, even if they want to help Mr. Mboj, can't access that information? And that is the law.
Yes.
The law is in black and white. If you give your details for a particular reason, it can only be used for that reason. You can't send it to a law enforcement agency because another agency has discovered that you're doing something criminal. You can't, so either for good or for bad, you cannot share it. And that is still the law.
Yeah.
You give it for one reason, it can only be used for that reason. And it's very, very strict. And those are some of the things that we need to grapple and wrestle with.
Yes, that's precisely it. When we look at our situation now, where do we see that we need the law most, as it were, in what form, how do we frame it, as it were, just looking at our situation specifically, I think it helps, so that you can tailor, as it were, your policy to what you have, and that's how you can maximize resources, as it were. This is really what we are saying, and I think when you are in situations like that, like this, I remember what Lincoln once said during the American Civil War. I mean, set your goals not further than what you can see.
Sure, exactly.
For now, then gradually, as it were.
Sure. I think that's as far as one can go. Thank you for that so much. Well, thanks for that. And that takes us nicely on to our next story. Of course, whatever you do, if you're watching this program, at some point you eat, and your food has to be safe. And so certain people are looking out for you. Have a look at this.
What results do we expect from this dialogue? Well, personally, I expect increased knowledge and understanding of food control systems, because we will tell you on our side as food control, as Food Safety and Quality Authority, as the regulatory body, we'll tell you our side, what we want from you. And I think once you understand what you want from us, then we will have an increased knowledge and understanding. Then I expect that after the dialogue, there would be an increased compliance and conformity to food regulations and control systems.
Mr. Mboj, you and I are always complaining about laws not being enforced and so on. I have to say, on 2 occasions, a few months apart, I happened to be in shops that were raided, I guess is the adjective one has to use, because they had been selling food that was expired, and those shops were closed for a couple of days or 3 days, and I was quite impressed. I thought, oh, so, you know, because I have to be honest, I was quite blasé about this. I thought, oh, you know, they have these laws, I bet they never enforce, but just totally accidentally, as I said, I won't say what types of shops they were, but they came in and they went round and said, this should not be on your shelves, and you know it, we've given you a warning, close the shop now. And they had to. And so at least they seem to be doing something about it, which, as I said, we always criticize that they're not doing enough.
Oh, absolutely. But again, what also we want is sort of for it to be effective, the combined effect, as it were. So what we've seen in the past, and anyway, is that yes, some people will be raided, as it were, and then you begin to realize that. I remember the person, I know of somebody who runs a restaurant, and he could see what was going on, and then he realized that. Look at these people, they're coming to me, but look right across. There's a small sort of eatery, if I can call it that, right there, but they wouldn't go there. So sometimes then it will feel like it is sort of inconsistently applied. They will just go to certain people, not others. In other words, this is the problem. Because of the lack of consistency, we know about the lack of staff and all the rest of it. So this is where the issue is, to the effect that then the kind of outcomes that you want, broadly, things are nothing is going on. Even though once in a while you will catch some of these culprits, as it were, but the combined effect, the overall effect is that it's not having that impact that we want to see. So this is the problem. So what would be the mechanism of enforcement we've seen in certain places, perhaps bringing in the war?
Sure. And I think they will talk about resources, of course, yes.
Absolutely, but somehow, if you want effectiveness, just imagine it, even with the smoking laws. So here it was like it was the police and all of that enforcing it. Can you imagine the whole country? There are more important things you should be doing. So I remember the restaurant where I hung out, there was a raid once, they didn't come, and then they said they stopped. And then we go a long time, suddenly everybody reverts to how things were. So the mechanism of enforcement is wrong. It's never going to work. You're going to do that. There's so much that you need to do. So how do you use other agencies of governance?
And it needs to be sustainable as well.
It needs to be sustainable.
Sure. Thanks for that, Mr. Mboj. But as I said, we all eat and we all want to eat safely. Thank you for that. And now on to something else. I'm always delighted when people who belong to a particular culture celebrate that culture in another country because they've held on to certain traditions. Have a look at this.
Making up around 18% of Nigeria's population, Igbo, also known as Igbo people, are mainly from southeastern Nigeria. The Igbo language originates from the Benue-Congo branch of the Niger-Congo language family, and large ethnic Igbo populations can be found in Cameroon, Gabon, and Equatorial Guinea, as well as outside Africa. In the Gambia, the first Igbo settlers are believed to have arrived even before independence, but it was not until the early 80s that they came together to form the Igbo Community Group.
Igbo community there, Mr. Mboj. As I said, for quite selfish reasons, I always like this sort of thing. Are there any cultures imported from elsewhere in our sub-region that you see displayed here that particularly strike you as lovely to see?
Well, with me, there's a way that I look at culture. It's very funny. When I see people, I say country, I'm not sure about culture bit, but I see more of individuals.
Right.
I don't see the wider background.
Right.
So for me, something like celebrating Igbo culture, or Wolof culture for that matter, anything, well, it is sort of an opportunity to have a party
Yes.
Yes.
Well, yes,
yes.
well, indeed. And that's the kind of thing,
yeah,
because
yes.
when I came here and I realized how strong the hunting culture, which is a Sierra Leone thing, that has been kind of now embedded here, particularly in Banjul,
Yes.
you know, I was quite pleased because it just was so evocative of what I had experienced growing up in Sierra Leone in the 1960s,
Yes.
and they've brought it here and they've retained it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you realize, for me,
Yeah.
growing up in Banjul,
Yeah.
that's my culture. That's just a
Yeah,
Banjul thing.
yeah, quite.
So the Sierra Leonean ownership, oh boy, I had to grow up to get that. But
Yeah.
again, that emotional connection,
Yeah, sure.
for me, that's my culture.
Yeah,
from
right.
Banjul, you see,
Yeah.
this is quite interesting.
Yeah.
So in many ways, for a long time, when one became a kind of individualist, I'm very suspicious.
Right.
I have to be honest with you, with these group identities.
Right, right.
It gives the impression that one is talking about one thing, when we all know that within any group identity there are complexities
multiple,
within it,
of course.
networks and different interests, perhaps even antagonistic interests.
Sure.
Nothing is homogeneous.
Sure.
So I really do not trust, I have to be honest.
Yeah.
Congratulations to the Igbo.
Yeah,
We
right.
all know Achebe.
Yeah, indeed.
I mean, of course, perhaps one of the most famous Igbos now, Chimamanda,
Of course.
even Ojoku. I mean, love that.
Many, of
yes, but again, one can see the other aspect. We also remember Biafra.
Of course.
So the dangers
Yes.
of certain nationalisms or
Yes.
group identities, the dangers.
Yes.
And wasn't it Freud
Yes.
who called it the narcissism of small things,
Small things.
differences?
Well, that's right, yes.
That is the danger.
I think for me, and one of the reasons why I celebrate it, just to close this, is because having spent so much of my life in England, I'm always quite pleased when I go and you have Africans sticking to things like naming ceremonies, which they don't have in England. It's a complete, it doesn't even mean anything there. And yet we've held on to that because it makes us, it's part of who we are. We're not English and we don't pretend to be.
Absolutely.
So,
well, for
yeah.
me, maybe I didn't do it in England, but
Yeah.
here I do. I must say, hey, look, on Monday I'm a Wolof, on Tuesday I'm a Mandinka, on Wednesday I'm a Fuller. I've got my Fuller hat, sometimes I wear it.
Correct.
And people will come to me and say, why are you wearing it? Are you Fuller?
Right.
That sounds very odd.
It's odd, but every day you're Gambian.
Every day, absolutely.
Absolutely.
So I am more of what the individual does.
Sure.
Much more than
Right.
the group.
Than the group
It
one.
doesn't have much hold on me, I have to say.
Okay, thanks. We differ there. And now on to something else. The Gambia Fire and Rescue Service has been teaming up with their counterparts, rather, in Avon, in England, for 30 years, no less. And things have changed quite a lot in that time. Have a look.
Former Chief Fire Officer Roger Bakurin said the 30-year partnership has achieved a lot for the country.
There were only 67 people in the fire service there. We were a unit of the Gambia Police Force, very small. Today I read somewhere that we have 1,300 or 1,000. Yeah, you can. So that's what I measure. I don't measure years. I measure achievements. And then we are present up to Basse, when we were only in Banjul. I remember we had a fire incident in Farafenye. The fire tenders were trying to respond to that fire in Farafenye. They got lumbered.
That one, serious, but still made us smile because over 30 years, we've heard how the service has grown. But Mr. Mboj, we have to be honest as well, still many, many challenges. On a daily basis, we get reports on fires, and most times we can't even cover them because there's just so many. Lots of challenges, but nonetheless, congratulations on this 30-year partnership because it's come with certain benefits.
Oh, absolutely. You don't look at a gift horse in the mouth. Everything is appreciated.
Sure.
Granted. It's just a matter of, with us as well, we have to look at the broader picture.
Indeed.
I'm sorry, we can't, one has to sort of see the wood for the trees. As it were. We try to do that. So, but this is interesting. This is the paradox, I suppose, of the situation. The fact that after 30 years, we still need them.
Yeah.
So much has changed over the 30 years. But one thing has remained,
Sure.
our dependency.
Indeed, and that's the kind of thing that struck me from the thing. They were still donating things like fire engines and so on. And look, I don't want to upset anybody in government, but I'd rather see a new fire engine than a new ministerial car any day. And, you know, it's about priorities. You know, what matters more to us? Is it ministers getting new vehicles, or is it the likes of fire engines being provided for our fire brigade? Really?
That's it. And we must keep on banging on about it.
Yeah, sure.
You know, especially as media people. That is why any of these announcements, it is really our job to sort of try to provide context.
Indeed.
You know what I mean? You appreciate it for what it is worth, yet so much remains. It's important for us to be realistic like that. Because I think even for the leadership, that's what you need for your people to be in that situation where they have knowledge of the difficulties that we face, so that psychologically we'll be in tune. It makes it easier to rule. But again, if you start putting hope so high, knowing that you really cannot deliver, you are storing up problems for yourself. Wasn't it what Cabral said? Do not make any sort of easy victories. Do not declare any easy victories. Do not lie to your people. Extraordinary. It seems so simple,
but it's true.
It seems very, very difficult, but I think it works. So we'll see how.
But as you say, you know, congrats, but still a lot needs to be done.
Absolutely, we need to wean ourselves
away from that.
Of certain things. That must be the project.
That is the big project. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And now to our final story. Batch cars. I'd never heard them described as batch cars until I came to the Gambia. But most people watching this in the Gambia know exactly what I'm talking about. For the rest of us, have a look.
Because first time, taxi man is,
people like batch cars. Look at them over there. They are around waiting for batch cars to transport them. Because if you come here, taxi drivers will only go on town trips. We will come and transport them up to Westville for only $10, and it favors them.
Alpha Amarba, a driver, also indicates that people mostly prefer batch cars because of their speed.
Batch cars are very fast. You can come and go within a short time. People nowadays run away from cars. They come to us. They usually have tranquility traveling in this vehicle.
I'm sure somebody watching this can tell me why they're called batch cars, Mr. Mboj.
Yes.
Have you ever taken one?
Oh, yes, I have.
I haven't yet in my 2.5 years here yet, but yes, please.
The other day I did from Manjai to Kisal, actually, and it was cool, you know, feeling the breeze, quite breezy.
Indeed, yes.
So, and of course, I mean, why not? They're here, people are sort of gradually getting used to it, and it can be more convenient sometimes. So that's what people use them for. And the idea of batch, well, I know the batch is a name. Is it that the car is sort of associated with this particular person, so that the person has taken on the name? Or this is just a conjecture here because of the name. So I thought perhaps they call it batch car because there's a famous batch, there's a pioneering batch somewhere possibly.
I think that brings us to the end of the program, sadly. But yes, I think I'll have to set myself the target of taking a batch car one of these days. Mr. Mboj, thank you for your interjections.
My pleasure.
And to our viewers, as ever, thank you for watching. Until next week, it's goodbye.
We will come.